I deal a lot with crises. It's relatively easy to change in crisis.
Because you have a burning platform.
You have a burning platform, and you don't have many options during crisis. So you don't need to be the smartest person in the room to change and to even lead the change in the crisis. But you need special skills. You need to be a sailor of troubled waters. You need to stay calm, not panic, maintain a rational approach, but be very decisive.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of the World Class Leader Show. I'm super excited today to have with me Stefano Aversa. Stefano, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Stefano is the chair of EMEA and vice chair globally for AlixPartners. He's talented and highly skilled turnaround expert with 30 years of experience. Stefano works with investors, boards, and managements of industrial companies, developing strategies and business plans, driving financial and operational turnarounds, and implementing large-scale performance improvement programs. Stefano has opened and led AlixPartners in Europe in 2023, before moving to US in 2005 as global president and returning to London in 2009 as co-president and chair for EMEA. He joined AlixPartners from Kearney, where he was global leader of the automotive and aerospace practice, and before he was technology manager at Marelli, the leading auto supplier. Stefano has an MBA from the University of Turin and a master's degree in mechanical engineering and robotics from the University of Florence, where he lives, right?
Yes.
Both with honors. He's a member of the World Economic Forum, the Clinton Global Initiative, Bocconi Advisors, INSOL, and the Society of Automotive Analysts. In a non-profit, he is a chairman of Andrea Bocelli Foundation. We'll come back to this. And he's fluent in Italian, English, French, and speaks Spanish. We're not going to test all of these languages today. I think we're going to stick with English.
Thank you so much.
Stefano, it's a pleasure having you on the show. I mean, for me, it's an honor, first of all, because you work for an organization that does something to me not only valuable, but super important and significant based on where companies are right now in terms of uncertainty, ambiguity, and all of that. I'm very curious. I mean, most of the people probably in the audience know about AlixPartners, but I wouldn't take it for granted, right? Because when it comes to consulting firms, I think there are a number of different perceptions about what consultancy firms does. Sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't really get it. So I think it's an opportunity maybe to explain what really AlixPartners does and what's the future of the organization. Something maybe that the audience doesn't necessarily know about the company.
Yes, some of our clients think that we are some of the best kept secrets, which is not necessarily a compliment because you need to develop business. But we have been spoiled because when I speak with my colleagues for many years, I've been saying that we were aggressively waiting for the telephone to ring.
Right.
So what AlixPartners has been doing since its inception, which is 43 years ago in 81, has been dealing with very critical, urgent, and important matters related to crisis, change of management, change of technology, and Alix not only created a company, but created a new business, which was a turnaround, a fresh start. He was the only known lawyer who rebuilt basically the Chapter 11. So
at the time, there was no any other firm that was doing that.
No,
right?
no, it was.
And at least not from a legal standpoint.
No, there was the legal standpoint, and we were doing all the rest. So the financial, the operation, the strategic part, and has been that means both interim management and advisory. At that time, was a relatively small company. When I joined 20 plus years ago, was about 100 people, 120 people. Now it's 3,000 people, 26 offices in the world, north of 2 billion of turnover. And we work, about 25% of what we do is restructuring, heavy duty turnaround and restructuring. People think it's more because when we do the restructuring of General Motors or Kodak, we hit the first page of Wall Street Journal. So we had a lot of free advertising, but it's only now 20-25% max, depending on the year. About 50% to 60% is what we call performance improvement, is what everybody else will call operational turnaround. So improving the performance, financial, operational performance of companies, going from good to great. So not companies that are in crisis, but maybe stressed, certainly underperforming. And the rest is what we call risk management, means supporting companies in big litigation, fraud, investigation, antitrust matters, big arbitrations, working again side by side with lawyers on that.
It's more about expert witness too. Is
Exactly.
included expert witness.
Include expert witness or economic consulting when you have, for example, a merge of two companies, or you have a cartel. You have to demonstrate that you had a correct conduct. To do that, you do some analysis of pricing versus the price of commodities, and you have to go in front of the court and with testimony
Yeah.
and nice dossier that supports your testimony.
Yeah. Understood. So I think it's interesting to discuss with you, Stefano, in the specific context of what you're doing. I mean, my observation because I think what's interesting is my work is really complementary of what you guys do, because I'm really focused on similar challenges, but from a leadership mindset standpoint. And what I noticed, at least my personal experience in the last few years, has been an increased number of organizations that are dealing with uncertainty, ambiguity, and that's really struggle to move forward, to drive different performance in the current scenarios. Primarily after COVID, as we all know, for valid reasons, supply chain challenges, increase of inflation, and you name it. Do you see a consistent, similar patterns in your experience, meaning more organizations struggling with coping with uncertainty right now?
The world is much more dominated today by disruptions than by what originally were called economic cycles. So if you look at the performance of the economy in general, we were accustomed, at least when I started 30, 40 years ago, there was strategic planning. Strategic planning doesn't exist anymore in the way I studied or I practiced for several years. Apart maybe from China and for a few others that can allow themselves to plan 10 years ahead, nobody really does.
Yeah.
And if you look at the performance, you don't see anymore these cycles that typically were between 5 to 8 years. You had a recession.
Cycles, yeah.
You don't have recessions anymore. The economy is driven mostly by central banks, excuse me, that print a lot of money and can avoid, de facto, as we avoided even the last potential recession. And what is really determining the performance are these disruptions. The disruptions are from the mother of all disruptions, like the pandemic, but it could be a tsunami, it could be a war, Ukraine, Gaza. Global events, which have two characteristics typically. They are very difficult to predict, and they tend to be very abrupt. So the disruption compared to the cycles tend to really hit you very quickly and typically very strongly. How to be able to deal with those? You have to prepare yourself with organizations and leadership, which is much more agile. You have to have always not only one but multiple plans B. And you also need to learn how to mitigate and readjust very quickly your operations. In the case, for example, of supply chain disruption, that was kind of a consequence of the pandemic, but was not only that consequence, or geopolitical, which is now the most important determinant of the economy and the risks that we see today, or cybersecurity. If I would make a prediction, what is the next big disruption? I think it would be a large-scale cyber attack that could block an entire city or even
Agreed.
an entire region, certainly entire companies. That have been already happening. What we know is just a part of what is happening. So, in that sense, there is a lot of uncertainty, ambiguity. I think we need to live with it, and we need to come out with a leadership which is much more agile, quick to react, and able to develop contingency plans very quickly and execute even more quickly.
So it's interesting. So we actually realized that early today that we have a friend in common. So Lorenzo Simonelli, that is the CEO of Baker Hughes. And when I interviewed him, that was more than a year ago, he really stuck in my mind when he said, for me, one of the major priority I have in Baker Hughes at the moment is creating a mindset and organization where people can deal with ambiguity without making a big fuss around it, because it's dealing with ambiguity and trying to drive opportunities and make a difference in ambiguity is a mindset shift. Many other people, and I think I really would like to get your view about it, is how not only CEOs but also in other layers of organization, how normally people react to this moment of ambiguity, uncertainty, disruption that you see. In my experience, I see this as a major challenge. So because people are not used to deal with change, especially when it's so big and so immediate as happens. Do you see the same thing in organizations?
Absolutely. The people in general do not like change.
Yeah, we're not wired for change.
No, and typically the change happens when the pain of the present is higher than the fear of the future, which is inevitably partially unknown. So I deal a lot with crisis. It's relatively easy to change in crisis.
Because you have a burning platform?
You have a burning platform. And you don't have many options during crisis. So you don't need to be the smartest person in the room to change and to even lead the change in the crisis. But you need special skills. You need to be a sailor of troubled waters. You need to stay calm, not panic, maintain a rational approach, but be very decisive. And you have to use an approach which is much more 80-20, sometimes even 70-30, because you don't have time to study the problem in all aspects. The time is a very important variable. The company might not exist 3 weeks later or 1 week later.
Yeah.
So you have to count the hours. You don't count even the days of So that attitude, which is a bit extreme, is important that everybody gets a bit of it. In fact, when people say, how can you go from one big change to another big change? I mean, I'm not tired to look at crisis of big change. For me, is the only thing that gives me the adrenaline and the motivation. And I think the crisis is one of the best management, not only management skill, but management school. I tend to say that the crisis is an opportunity which is too important to miss.
Yeah, I agree.
Because some changes, including governments, can only make certain change reforms, if we talk about governments, or significant change of the structure, only in a crisis. And if you miss that moment, then it's going to be much harder. It will require a very strong leadership, higher risk, and inevitably you have to go through compromises. Time is a standard. So people do not like it. Crisis can help, but also having very strong leaders which are not only convincing, but are able to aggregate consensus about significant change is a skill that today is particularly appreciated and needed.
So I have a question about what you just said. By the way, I fully agree with you. I have a client. You remind me a client of mine. When I started working with them from in a discovery phase, people used to say, "Yeah, we're very good in crisis. We were very good during COVID," and that's not the first time I hear it. The same feedback from organizations. And what they don't necessarily realize is because COVID was a burning platform, they required immediate intervention, change your way of working, and whatever. And my personal idea is, yes, it's way easier to deal with crisis because they require immediate intervention. They require something different from organizations. But if we move to the good to great part, which is okay, now that we are stable, then what I notice is organization they lose their ability to deal with the next step of growth because they don't see that as a crisis. They don't have any more the burning platform. They become much more complacent, and that I think is the major roadblock to grow to the next level. Is this something that you see too, and what your best suggestion for organization that after they went through crisis, now they need to go to the next level? Do you see the same pace, the same?
Yeah, totally. And I can share a little secret that it's something that I do, which is fairly unusual. Sometimes I create the crisis, even when there is not. And it could be a small crisis, but for example, very often there is some uneasiness in the organization. I get in organization, you can feel there's something not right. People do not talk to each other, but then you start talking one by one, and you get a lot of complaints or a lot of finger points, etc. And this is the moment where I sometimes create a crisis. So I create and I emphasize something that existed and happened. It could be solved at a lower level, but I elevate the issues so that you get transparency of conflict that normally are not exploding, but until they do not explode, they cannot be solved because they stay in the background, in the back burner. But they can kill the organization because it takes a lot of energy out of the people. It doesn't get clarity on who is who are the roles, who is really well meant, who is not. One of the things that I do in companies that needs a turnaround, in the very first few days, I interview people and I create a bit of a chart of people that is in favor of the change or not in favor of the change, and people that have high energy or low energy. If you have the people that are high energy and unfavorable or hostile, these are people that need to get out as soon as possible because they will sink any attempt. Some of them are passive aggressive, some are really aggressive. But the aggressive, you can spot them easily. The passive aggressive are a bit more difficult to spot. So these are the ones you have to address. Either they change very quickly on the spot, or they should get out. And very often they have to get out. Then you have the high energy favorable. These are the ones you can count on. You can make them the leaders. So you give them some leadership position, at least temporarily, to lead the change.
Yeah, they can be empowered for
because they have. You need people to lead the change. And then you have the low energy. The low energy, they tend to be the majority of the people. Some people are just going to work to get the pay. So they don't get the pay because they work, but they get to work because of the pay. And they can be favorable or unfavorable. You have to try to make them more favorable, and you have to identify the ones that are actually low energy because they are disconnected, they are not feel appreciated. So you have to try to identify the ones that have high potential, but for whatever reason, they are now kind of sitting there and
they're not engaged.
Not engaged, and they are working at 20% of their potential. So these are maybe two little things I can share.
Yeah, I'm sure there is more, but you can definitely share everything. Yeah, by the way, I strongly believe, I know it's kind of a ballpark, but the idea of the rule of third, meaning there is 1/3 in any organization normally is very favorable about the change, 1/3 is very resistant, then there is 1/3 which is in the middle, that is the one that you can actually, if you win then really they might become the majority organization and join the other third, which I think is very consistent. So if let's shift a little bit more into the CEOs. You work with a lot of CEOs, of course. I think they are them and the board. I think there are people that are calling you and AlixPartners to get involved. How do you see the CEOs right now in terms of their role, their habit, their mindset, in terms of driving, the future of their organization? Do you see something kind of a new way of dealing with because for example, one interesting data I read recently is the fact that first of all, the average tenure of CEOs now is getting shorter. And there are CEOs now that they're leaving the organization anyway more than what happened years ago, even for personal reasons, for stress, mental health. So there is an element of that is coming to play. Is there anything else that you see in CEOs right now driving change during these times?
So we're talking about disruption before because of AlixPartners dealing a lot with also turnaround or significant change. We study disruption. So every year we publish what is called Disruption Index. And
which I read, by the way, is fantastic.
Okay. Thank you for saying that. So it's, and we interview a lot of CEOs every year. And one thing that emerged this year is that 79, if I well remember, of the CEOs are very unsure about their own role. They
79%.
79%. It's huge and was much less before. So the first comment to your open question is that the CEOs are more unsure today than they used to. The second comment...
Is affected their confidence level too, do you think?
I think subliminally, yes. They will never say that, but inside they don't feel as safe as they used to be. And the reasons that we try to understand behind it is first of all, there are a lot of changes in the world of technology, but most CEOs do not really know how to use it or what to do with it, and they expect that will disrupt. There is certainly we were mentioning the geopolitical change. This year, only about 60+% of the world is going through election today in UK. End of the week will be France, and very soon US. We had Europe. There will be plenty of now Iran even, and that creates a lot of uncertainty itself. There is certainly a divide from the Western world, and then you have what people think are the bad guys, so Russia, China, Iran, and maybe a couple of smaller other companies. And then you have a bunch of countries, but a lot of hundreds of millions of people that are kind of not aligned. They don't want to take parties. They have other problems. They have to grow. And I think that creates additional uncertainty because before, frankly, there was this multilateral world that seems like working. You don't have UN anymore as a power. It's completely ineffective. So, coming back to your question, the CEOs as less, they feel less safe. And if there is a trend, it's always difficult to generalize, but if there is a trend, I think it's fairly evident, is that the CEOs tend to be more consensus oriented. They tend to be a bit more caring. They tend to be more authentic in the way, so they want to appear more as human beings. And I think also the world is more forgiving or asking for this kind of authenticity. Yeah. They don't want the boss which is very bossy. They want a boss that works with you and and is listening as much or more than telling you what to do. So there is this new, to some extent new, has always existed, but is emphasized, style of leadership which is becoming prevalent. Having said that, at the end of the story, as a CEO, you are fired not because you have
Your style, but for
have
your
a
results.
results or you do something bad, ethically, morally.
Which unfortunately
Happens
still happens.
more often than not. But it's about performance.
Yes.
So you can talk about ESG, you can talk about digital, you can talk about a lot of smoke, but at the end, what really matters is what are the results. Typically, not in the CEO typically are not fired on the budget. The CEOs are fired on a plan. So you make a plan 2-3 years. You can go by a bad year. Difficult to go by 2 years. Certainly, you cannot go through 3 years of bad performance.
Yeah. And I suppose board could be, and I think that resonates with me. I think boards also, they are okay investors in general, waiting for maybe 1 year to change the situation, but then already in the second year they want to see something different, right?
Yes, and you remind me another thing that maybe is worth mentioning. They used to be the big corporation. Now they still have big corporation, but the new corporate are private equities. Private equities are recreating a new form of corporate where each company is managed as a portfolio. Yeah. And the difference is that these are not public companies. And the characteristic of private equities is that they are less patient. They are less sentimental about things, including people. They need to create value in a relatively short time, typically in the first 2 years of their 4 or 5 years tenure. So they are less forgiving. If a CEO doesn't work, again, 1 year maybe there are good reasons, second year.
They have less patience, definitely, than
Absolutely.
traditional investors
Yeah,
in corporations.
And if you have the big family behind, they tend to be more patient, paternalistic, find a justification, much less so for professional investors.
Although they might be in families, there may be more emotional reaction when things
but in general, they are slower.
Yeah, they're slower than
in reacting.
Because maybe they don't necessarily know how to drive different things. So
yes.
They trust more anyway. Yeah, that makes absolutely sense. And I do agree. I think the PE-backed CEOs, they're very, very, I wouldn't say different, but CEOs that are working for PE-backed companies, they face different challenges than other type of CEOs. Although, generally speaking, there is less patience anyway across the board.
Yeah, they face the same challenges as
Yes.
business leaders, but they, in addition, they have
pressure.
Yes, more pressure from.
Totally. Talking about leadership, I would like to move a little bit more into your story. I mean, you've been a senior leaders for such an important organization for many years in different parts of the world, and then also you decide to join. And I know you are very active in your non-profit world. So I'm interested to understand first, what is your driver to be part of the non-charity world? Because I know it's a personal decision, it requires a lot of time, it's fulfilling, but I appreciate, everybody, is so much involved. And you are, and also if you like to, give a little bit more visibility of the work that Andrea Bocelli is doing in his foundation, because I know it's important, it's critical, behind the scene, you told me more about the foundation. I think it's massive, the role is heavy. So tell me more about why you're so interested to that world, and tell me more about the foundation as well.
Yeah, it's true that I'm interested, but like many things in life, it happened to me by chance. Sometimes the good things happen by chance, not only the bad things. And in this case, the foundation was already existing. It was a family foundation. It was more created as a way to channel their activity, the charity activity, because they had a lot of requests
To support. Yeah.
to support, and they were doing it, but in you know,
In an unstructured way.
in a structured way, so that and they created this very, very small and relatively disorganized but nice foundation. And then, how can a businessman cross a celebrity? It happened actually in Davos during the World Economic Forum when he was invited for. He was actually part of it for the Crystal Award, and he came and sang. And
When you say he, Andrea Bocelli.
he, Andrea
just so you know.
Bocelli,
Yep.
yes, I should say that. Then they look at who were Italian. There were very few Italians in Davos. They saw what I was doing, so they contacted me there. We met, said we would like to take our foundation to the next level and really make it an organization that is global. And so I did a pro bono for them. And I started. At the end, I said, this is the organization that I think would make sense for you. This is the governance. Among the things I said is also you should find a good chairman. And then they say, fantastic, we like the strategy, the vision, the organization, etc. And a couple of weeks later, they came back to me. And by the way, I discovered that we live like 200 meters away in Tuscany, but we never crossed.
So you met Andrea in Davos?
In Davos,
for the first time?
For the first time, Davos. And then they said, we found a chairman. And they said, it's you. I said, no, I'm in London, I'm busy, I am not particularly competent in non-profit. Actually, I'm not competent at all. So I will help you find a good one. But they really insisted. And I think they were, it was a great opportunity because at the end it's very difficult to say no. I was 55. And I think there is a point in life that I wanted to do something for charity. I just didn't feel ready to be a chairman and drive that organization. So I got involved and I learned by doing. I learned also learning from others, experts, etc. But I applied a lot of the things you do in business in the non-profit. There is no reason at all why a non-profit should have people of less quality.
Absolutely.
They tend to be paid less, to some extent, unfortunately, but they work like crazy.
And the challenges are like any other business to some
absolutely,
extent.
sometimes harder.
Yeah.
Because you work with situations that are very extreme. So the Andrea Bocelli now is an organization 13 years later, since its inception. We raise about 10 million a year, north of that now. And we have our objective is to empower people and communities, which in other words means making sure that every, particularly young person, independently from the social, socioeconomic, or health or conflict reason, we want him or her, he or she, reach its full potential. So develop their talents and reach their potential. So we have schools that we have developed in Haiti, which is typically at the last in all economic or parameter of development, and we have about 4,000 kids that are learning now in high quality way, including lab for computers and so on, in the middle of the forest. The literacy level there is well below 50%. And there are riots at the moment, is as bad as it can be. And so this is one program. We bring water to the slums. So we really sustain them. In Italy, we operate after the earthquake in the center part of Italy, again, rebuilt in schools. In that case, incredibly beautiful schools and very focused on art and science. So our vocational schools. And we have program on choir kids in very difficult areas in Haiti. We started in September, just 1 month before the tragic events of October 7th. We started a choir of kids in Jerusalem, actually with mixed kids from all parties and religions. And we have a similar one in Naples, in the Rione Sanità, in one difficult part of Naples. And we might open the next one in Uganda soon. So the idea is that through a very professional choir and music learning, you can take the kids out of situation of, some case, desperation, in some case, self-awareness, self-esteem. So through that, you really work on their of becoming better people, better men, not necessarily another Andrea Bocelli. We have schools in hospitals for kids that are hospitalized with leukemia or other illness, long-term illness. We want them to continue to learn, and so we have created programs specially for them with iPad and with special people that we have trained to work. So we are in the 12 top pediatric hospital of Italy.
Great.
And we are bringing that program elsewhere. So we have a number of other programs, but in common they have that mission of empowering people and communities. So not just the kids, but also their parents and the community that live with them.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic, and I mean, given I've been following Andrea and his work on social media, etc., we are aware about that, but I'm not sure everybody is. So I think that was an opportunity for those people that don't know about the foundation to follow the foundation, see the work they're doing, because based on what you're saying, I think it's massive value for people. They deserve it. By the way, I think people might be curious anyway to understand more who is Andrea Bocelli. I mean, besides being one of the most wonderful
That's
singers, who is Andrea Bocelli?
Fantastic question, because we all know Andrea Bocelli as an artist, including myself. And if I would say today which part of Andrea I like the best, is certainly the part of the human part of him, which is really exceptional. This is a man that doesn't want to be called handicapped or impaired. He thinks that when you have a talent, you get a gift. He said, okay, I didn't got the sight, or he lost sight when he was 11, but I got this great talent of singing. And I've been super lucky. I've been successful. I've been loved. I love what I do. I made some money that I now can also give back to the communities that I belong to or that I want to support, or people. So he is a very deep thinking man. One thing that I reflected with him, not having the sight, that out of our five senses, sight is where we get 80+% of the information. And because we live in a world where we are bombarded by information, we tend to be distracted or becoming almost, unable to concentrate on one thing anymore. And from that standpoint, he has an advantage because he can be more selective. He can go deeper on fewer things. And talking to him, for me, is refreshing because he focuses on the essence. And he's obviously a man of faith, very deep faith. He wants to be good. He wants to do good. And that makes him a really special person. At the same time, he likes to joke. He has a part of him which is very light. He doesn't take himself too seriously. The other day, he was going on stage in front of almost 40,000 people, 50,000 people in Brazil, and we were talking over the phone, and he said, now I need to go and do 2 or 3 of my screams. So he's
taking life, in
the right way.
In a right way.
We always say that it's very important to take whatever we do seriously, but never take yourself too seriously. And he absolutely followed that.
Yeah, and it's such a wonderful reflection what you shared, Stefan. I think is, first of all, the idea of, losing sight, as many other things, can be perceived as a weakness, as for many other things that we think we miss or we really missed, but actually can generate something different in people. And it sounds like from that situation, or whatever happened to him when he was 11 years old, has been able to create something different for himself, and has actually become a strength for himself.
Yes.
Which I think is a great lesson for people, especially now that we're living in a context where DEI conversation is so important.
It's very inspiring, I think,
It's
and that's the point. Another thing that he says, which I think is fairly unusual, he says that the talent is an obligation. It's not just a gift. It's an obligation to develop. So if you are born with a gift, with a talent,
you have the responsibility.
You have a responsibility to develop it. And I think it's a deep reflection. You take a gift as a granted? No, it's a burden too, because you have to develop and work hard to become someone special and make everybody, in a way, profit or gain from your talent.
Yeah, what a wonderful way to finish this episode. Because that is a great reminder. Also, I think it's a great final takeaway for people. They feel like, we don't have time to talk more about talent. What does it mean, talent? But I think it's taking talent, have the responsibility to develop and not let it go. I think it's a great mindset. Again, going back to mindset shift for people to think about that we all have possibilities and we need to develop and cultivate what we have, because they may become our best strengths that we have in life, which is amazing. Stefan, that was inspiring and incredibly insightful. Where people should go if they want to know more about you and or the foundation?
On the foundation, we have a wonderful site. Is www.andreabocellifoundation.org, not .com,
right.
.org. And AlixPartners is www.alixpartners.com. And I'm always reachable through either the social media or emails that can be found on the site. I'm also trying to do my little part in making this world a bit better than I found it. So I'm here for that mission.
Wow, fantastic. That is having a purpose in life. Stefano, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.